Hello there, this is Steve here in Sydney of the Diagnosis website truebluehealer.com. I've got something special for you here today which empowers you to change something on the macro level of society while working from inside one of the levers available to you inside your personal bubble. I know that so many evil, nasty things happen in the world and you feel powerless. There's entrench monopolies and panoplies and dreadful things going on all the time. And you often feel utterly powerless. You watch the horrifying 6 o'clock news, that sort of thing. And you say, there's numerous things could be done better, but it's not happening. But who am I? I'm just a lone individual. So you go back to living inside your own little personal life bubble, doing what you can there to make it as comfortable as possible for you and your loved ones. But there is one instance where there's a lever poking into your little personal bubble where you can directly affect, yes, you dear viewer, you the individual can affect the macro, and it can be spread exponentially if people just do this thing, a word of mouth, which empowers you the individual to bypass all the terrible media controls I'm sure you're aware of. And it goes like this. There's a terrible epidemic called diabetes going around the world at the moment, the Western world, and the horrifying problem is that Western medicine, which is trained to be completely pharmaceutical, that means every disease must have a patented chemical cure, they mysteriously haven't provided a cure for diabetes type 2, which is now approaching the level of 1 person in 3 for young people. This is a serious epidemic, quite as serious, just as serious as the plagues of middle-aged Europe. It's not funny, and you might think, well, what the hell's going on? I can't help this either. You might even have type 2 diabetes, or you could develop it. You could be pre-diabetic. Now, from inside your personal bubble, I'm going to put your hand on a lever that you can manipulate, you can work to change the Western world's ideas and perceptions about diabetes. It sort of goes like this. Big Pharma's never produced really miracle medicines. It's really always produced long-term palliative care, because there's a lot more money made by dispensing medicines to people who are slowly dying over a period of decades. And diabetes type 2 is a slow death sentence, but while you're there, Big Pharma's going to milk you for every dollar you've got for all the medications. And I'm quite certain that Big Pharma executives would love everyone on the planet to have type 2 diabetes, because they are in fact owned and operated by oil companies. Standard Oil, did you know that? Operated by the Rockefellers, okay? They installed and operate all the medical schools of any repute. The Rockefeller Standard Oil Company did that. They launder the money through Rockefeller foundations so that they train doctors in pharmaceutical medicine only. Okay, so what can you do about this gargantuan behemoth that you were born into? It's all around you in society, from inside your little personal bubble. Well, here is where I give you a little lever. Okay, now pay attention. I have just saved somebody from death by diabetic neuropathy. My brother-in-law called from Fiji. This is an example. This is a real life thing that happened 2 weeks ago. My brother-in-law called from Fiji to say goodbye to his 2 sisters living in Sydney. He was dying of diabetic neuropathy. Okay? A very serious business. And the doctors had sent him home from the hospital to die after giving him 6 years of medications, heart medications, etc. I heard his farewell phone call, and he was describing his symptoms to my wife, and I heard that his heart was beating at 30 beats a minute only, laboured breathing, swollen chest. He'd lost all feeling in his feet, and his feet were swollen, and his eyesight was starting to fail, you see. These are all symptoms of diabetic neuropathy. On top of that, the final insult was that he couldn't even piddle. He couldn't even piddle. He was so swollen with inflammation in his body. his prostate gland had swollen so much it choked off the urine flow. Okay, so he couldn't even piddle. So the doctors threw their hands in the air at the Fiji hospital in Nandi, and they basically sent him home to die. So I overheard this phone call, and I grabbed the telephone off my wife and I said, "That's not what you really have. You don't really have diabetic neuropathy, dear Chanan." That's his name, Chanan. I said, "You've actually got something called beriberi, which is a funny side effect of type 2 diabetes with elevated sugar levels. You piddle out vitamin B1, thiamine, 16 times faster than usual, and there's a magic pill, a fat-soluble vitamin B1 that you can't piddle out, which will reverse your neuropathy in a couple of weeks." He was astonished. I'll really say that he was astonished. He didn't really want to believe it because he was at death's door. He'd been describing that very vividly, and he's literally saying goodbye, farewell to his two sisters, you see. I immediately sent my own personal supply of Benfotiamine to him as quickly as possible in the post. And just after 1 week of tablets, he was off his deathbed, up and walking around. He could do 3 things that he couldn't do 1 week previously because of Benfotiamine, the fat-soluble vitamin. His heart was beating at a normal rate. It had normalised. He could now breathe again. Feeling was returning in his feet, and he could piddle again. Okay, so that's a dramatic reversal, getting someone off their deathbed in Fiji 2 weeks ago. This is my personal experience. Okay, so this to me is dynamic proof, dramatic proof that all that stuff written up in PubMed and everything about Benfotiamine reversing neuropathy is absolutely true. So now I'm going to tell you the second part of the story. This is kind of amusing. It's a wonderful trick I did. I'm learning to manipulate the system from inside my own personal bubble, because there's a handle poking into my personal bubble, namely my local general practitioner, a doctor. I'm going to tell you the method by which you can manipulate a doctor into dispensing Benfotiamine. There's a way to do this. It's a vitamin, but it's an unknown vitamin. Doctors are very curious, yet it's an unknown vitamin. It does not appear in any vitamin table. You'll not find it in any vitamin book, but it definitely is a vitamin, but it's fat soluble, so it's an unusual vitamin B1 supplement with a strange fat soluble property. Now, how do you get this past a Big Pharma controlled doctor? Well, I'm going to tell you how I did it with 2 doctors already, and I've got another one in my sights. This is what I said, and this is what I suggest you do. To the diabetes specialist, I casually said to him, using my most wide-eyed innocent voice, layperson, letting the big, powerful, knowledgeable academic doctor talk down to me, I sort of rolled him over to expose a weak part of his knowledge base. And I said, "Doctor, if someone develops diabetic neuropathy, how many sorts of therapies do you have for that?" And the specialist looked at me, he looked terribly serious, and he said, "Well, to tell the truth, to be quite honest, Western medicine has no cures or therapies for diabetic neuropathy. And it's a shame we sort of watch people slowly die while we sell them tablets that don't really reverse their disease at all." So, So I got that out of him, out of this diabetic specialist. He's trained up on the very latest techniques of healing people with pharmaceuticals, etc. So I already had him in a position of exposing one of his weakest parts of his treatment regimen available. Part of his arsenal was a big blank space as far as I'm concerned. So then I used a little piece of terrorism. I said to him, "Doctor, does this mean that if you yourself develop diabetes type 2, and 1 in 3 people do, does that mean that you could waste away and your feet could fall off too, and you could lose your eyesight with diabetes, and you couldn't do a thing about it, doctor? And he went, very sadly, he said, yes, I'm afraid that is the truth. That is the truth, he said, that is the truth. So now you've got him frightened and he's thinking about his own mortality. This is when you strike. You say to the doctor, doctor, would you like to see 150 references on PubMed as to how to reverse diabetic neuropathy? I've printed one of them out for you, and I'll show it to you later. Naturally, he hasn't got time to read a 5-page printout in front of you. Doctors are always in a hurry. So when he gets to halfway down the page, you'll say, this is quite interesting. I'd like to know more about this. And you say, doctor, I've already got a USB stick with a Word doc on it for you, full of links to doctors' websites endorsing Benfotiamine to reverse diabetic neuropathy. By this time, once he's considered his own mortality and the fact that he's bloody hopeless treating diabetes, he's in a very receptive situation to take anything you will give him. Okay? So, I've already done this with 2 doctors. I have a 3rd one in my sights. Okay? Johnny Appleseed, you might call me. But I did that from inside my little personal bubble. I have no media push, no media strength. I can't get on TV. Rubbish gets on TV, but I can't get there with this wonderful life-saving message that's crippling the Western world. We've got to do something about it. And here's where you, in your personal bubble, you can make a difference. Because the handle poking in to your personal bubble is your local general practitioner. Okay? So do think about that. Now, the Word doc that I'm talking about has got half a dozen links on it, a little bit of commentary, and it's posted below this video so you can download it and you can print out the Word doc, read it yourself, check all the links yourself, and you can also print out the one article from the Life Extension Foundation, and that's the article you would give to him in the surgery right after you set him up and put the fear of death into him first. Okay? Really revealing his inadequacies as a practitioner. I mean, what a bloody disgrace. 1 in 3 people are going to die of neuropathy in the Western world. It's a plague like you wouldn't believe. It's worse than cancer. And he can't do a thing about it. What a disgrace. All this scientific medicine is a failure. So here's where you, dear viewer on YouTube, you can make a difference from inside your personal bubble just by showing a Word doc, a USB stick, and having the right sort of conversation with your local general practitioner doctor. Is this a good idea or what? We can do this word of mouth. Barefoot agitators bringing messages of hope. I'm sure every doctor would like to know how to reverse diabetic neuropathy, because they must feel woefully inadequate and likely suffer post-traumatic stress disorder from being absolutely useless watching people's feet fall off and watching them go blind and watching them dying of cardiac beriberi, which they've never heard of. Remember, it's not entirely their fault, but I wouldn't let them off the hook. It is their bloody fault for making so much money and not curing anybody. They just take everybody's money. They really want to spread diabetes. As far as I'm concerned, they don't want to cure it. They want to milk it for all the revenue it's worth. Have I said enough for you? I'm hoping I can motivate you to listen to this video a couple of times, practice a conversation you're going to have that I just rehearsed for you, practice going through it, how you're going to, and just ask the wide-eyed question like an innocent layman, knowing he's got a 300,000 word vocabulary and he's an academic and he's so clever, but he's got a terrible secret that if someone gets diabetes, you can't really help them. Okay, so that's his weak spot, and that's where you go. That's the thermal port exhaust in the Death Star. Okay, can I put it that way? So good luck to you spreading this knowledge of how to reverse type 2 diabetes with a single printout and a USB stick and a little conversation with your local doctor. Steve here in Sydney, over and out. And can I just add, there is a force multiplier effect here in operation. Namely, you pull a little lever, which is simply the local general practitioner. He's going to talk to other doctors. They do shop talk and discuss things and show things to each other. And I want to point out to you the powerful effect your handing in that sheet can be. Comes from PubMed, which is like the Bible to doctors. It's a medical database. And for the doctor who's been trained not to know about this by chemical, pharmaceutical, Big Pharma, it's going to be a resounding personal discovery. Okay, so it's going to be a likely powerful motivator, and the general practitioner is completely and ideally positioned to test this out on 3 or 4 patients straight away. The medicine's very cheap. It's about $25 for a month's supply of Benfotiamine, and he can just ask them. Okay, so it empowers the local doctor to heal people, to verify that it's true, and add a powerful weapon to his arsenal against modern diseases. So there's a number of ways you get force multiplication from your simple little conversation with your local doctor. Okay, so do dwell on that and give it a go. Everybody knows a doctor somewhere, and you could, if you're a type 2 diabetic yourself, it's especially relevant when you talk about this. Okay, so I want you to give it some serious thought and see if you can get a USB stick or a single printout and take it into a doctor's office and say, hey, you know, I want to know about this. Keep it all concealed until you got into the point where he wants to know. Okay, after he's admitted he's bloody hopeless at treating diabetes. Okay, one final word is you still need to take your diabetic meds. You can't throw them all away. You can't ignore rocketing high sugar levels. But it takes away the terrorism of being sentenced to death by diabetes, which is what the diagnosis of type 2 really is. You are sentenced to a slow death, and all they do is give you palliative medicines, okay, and injections, and none of them really work. You will still die of diabetic complications, namely neuropathy, blindness, feet falling off, heart problems. Okay, so here's a way to move one little handle inside your personal bubble and shake the outside world with a regenerative, energetic shockwave, okay, that can pass from doctor to doctor privately. Okay, they don't have to tell Big Pharma. We'll see how long we can get this going, okay, how far we can take it. I don't think you'll ever see this on television. Big Pharma own and control that. Okay, so I'll leave you with that. Steve here in Sydney. Over and out, this time for real.